This week on Off the Air, John Martin.
John Martin joins us here on the Off the Air podcast. John, thanks for being with us.
Emmanuel, thank you. I've been looking forward to it.
John, you look back at your career and you look at this year. How does this compare with anything you think sports and the world as a whole has gone through?
Doesn't. No comparison. And, you know, in many ways, I'm thankful that I'm retired from full-time because a lot of the stuff that somebody that was in my position would have to deal with these days it's just been incredible. From, you know, are they going to start up? Are they not going to start up? Starting up, and then the NBA players at one point considering just canceling the whole season in the wake of, you know, what happened in Kenosha. And that, and also with producing things from, you know, remote in-house and trying to set that up and coordinate with on-site to try and get some ambient sound and real-time pictures for the people who are calling the games. Just a lot of stuff to undertake, enormous. And again, just from the social and economic impacts as well, and the human toll too, from people who've, you know, worked through this, people who've contracted COVID. So crazy, totally crazy.
John, thanks again so much for doing this. I was curious to get your perspective on how you might have handled your job at ESPN with things moving to a virtual format and all the craziness going
on. Probably a lot of meetings, more than I was never a big fan of meetings. I thought after the first maybe 15 or 20 minutes that the best ideas probably had been laid out on the table, and then it was just time to create action plans and go forward. But I think I would have really been trying to surround myself with a lot of people, especially on the technical side, both the video and audio. And from what I just mentioned previously, is how to best coordinate. So that would also have taken a lot of legwork with the leagues. The NBA, I think, as you can see from the telecast, has been phenomenal. No surprise. Head and shoulders, I think, above everybody else. NHL has done a great job too. But you see how the NBA added in the virtual fans and the ambient noise, and you know, they've been able to separate people on the benches, etc., and they've had no issues. I mean, that bubble has been, you know, pretty sacrosanct. The NHL, in the same way, has done the same thing. Baseball, much harder. I do know that they had been considering trying to create a bubble. I think Arizona had been their main focus because of the proximity of all the spring training sites there. Would have made that a better choice than Florida. But, you know, I didn't deep dive too much with them into what were the drawbacks that they saw. So that's been a lot harder for them to, you know, pull off without the stops and starts that we saw with the Marlins and the Cardinals and you know, other teams, you know, even the Mets even, where people, you know, got sick. So now we'll have to see about the NFL and college football. And again, first the Big Ten isn't playing. Now they're talking about playing. Just a lot of stuff. So that's why the hair is not the color that I was born with, and would probably have been snow white by this time if I was still working full time.
John, so much to get into with your career, but you started at Fordham back in 1971. What drew you to sports broadcasting initially?
Well, I was fortunate to this before freshman eligibility, so I was on the freshman basketball team, and that was the year that Digger Phelps, his 1 year at Fordham. So I would listen to the varsity games when they were, you know, playing away, and no offense to my former FUV colleagues, but I would hear how the games were called, and I'd say, I don't know what they're talking about. So that was kind of the first bug that got in my head. And then Dennis Elsis, who is Monday through Fridays now on FUV, lived 2 doors away from me in Jackson Heights, Queens. And we became friends. And he took me into WFM at one point, and I got to tour the studios. So that was kind of when the bug hit. I had taken some time off from Fordham, and when I went back, I said, this is what I want to do. So I walked into FUV, and I said, I'd like to join up. They said, what do you want to do? I said, I'll stuff envelopes. I don't care. I think that was a Friday, so they told me to come back on a Monday. They had an afternoon show, which was a 3-hour classical music show, but they did news inserts and features, etc. So I was supposed to help out. Well, I showed up. 3 people had called in sick, and they handed me some information about, it was coming up on tax time, the IRS, and they said, write a feature and you're on at 3:05. So my first day I was on the air, and I pulled it off, and then we just, ran with it. So that's how it started.
So you walk into WFUV, and at 3 o'clock you're on. What was that experience like, just sort of being thrown immediately into the fire? It's go time.
Well, the girl who was producing the show said, have you ever done that? I said, no, never done this before. So she kind of rolled her eyes and said, go ahead. So back then in ancient times, to do a phoner, you had push-to-talk phones, so that, and the people were showing me how when you asked a question, then you let go of the push, the lever, so that you wouldn't be breathing while the person on the other end of the phone was talking. Okay, so you mute yourself. Fine. All right, got that. All right, now I have this sound. What do I do with it? All right, so I have to take it from reel to reel and put it on carts. I don't even know if you guys know what carts were, but they'll put them on carts. Okay, so that's how you edit it down and write a script. All right, I was fairly decent at writing. So, okay, got that. Walked in, sat down, cued, did it, walked out, and the girl was standing outside the studio. And I walked out, and I said, okay, here it comes. And she says, you lied to me. I said, I lied to you? You told me you never did this before. And I said, I didn't. She goes, you're lying. She said, that was really good. And I said, well, I'm Irish, so the speaking part of it really didn't create a big issue for me, and being a little animated maybe, et cetera, et cetera. So that was, the short answer, Nick, is I really wasn't that nervous, a little apprehensive, but not like shaking. And once I got rolling, I said, okay, I can do this. I had to ask, I said, okay, so how do I know when are you going to play the card? And the guy says, just give me one of these. I said, okay. So do one of those and play the card. I learned about out cues, in cues, and out cues, and all of this stuff on the fly. So
I don't want to harp on this too much, but I don't know that I can let you get away with not talking about a weekend with John Madden and your interactions with Brent Musburger. You mentioned that it sort of really helped you and helped you shape your career going forward. What were some of those things that really were helpful to you, learning from some of the best people in the industry early on in your career?
Well, John, for instance, and I've never forgotten this. Just one time it was like, Johnny, what do you want to do? What do you mean, John? What do you want to do? I mean, and what do you think you're really good at? And maybe you should focus on that. And I had never drilled down and focused in on that. So that got me to thinking, okay, was I, really obsessed with being on air? Should I really, pursue this whole hog? Or, I like the production side. When we did the Olympics, I wrote features that John voiced. And I also wrote his commentaries during the Olympics. But, I mean, we would sit down and discuss, John, what do you want to say? And that the only reason that I wrote them, because John always wrote them out longhand, otherwise, was just because of time crunch. So, John, what do you want to say? Okay, fine. And then I try and put that into a 2-minute thing. I try and write it like I thought John would say it in Maddenese. How's that? And we'd record it. So that whole thing about focusing in on what do I really want to do, at that point. And with Brent, the whole, both from being on the set at the NFL Today and watching how he worked in terms of storylines and impact of situations, and how they not only impact or germane to that particular game, but impacted other scenarios or other situations around the league. So learned not to have like blinders on, but to see things bigger picture. And Brent's, how should I say this? Suspicions about, say, what we were being told or what we were seeing and what we thought might really be going on in terms of athletes' conditions or front office stuff or whatever. That suspicion, curiosity was, something that stuck with me too. And he may have been the most prepared. I never worked with Costas in the studio, but I've worked with Brent. And when I got to ESPN Radio, Mike Tirico, who was just starting out. And Mike Tirico, even in a radio setting, we did a 2-hour show on Sunday mornings. And first, right out of the bat, the first 15 minutes, and I told him this, I said, boy, you got a lot of Musburger in you. Because not only could he do the on-air, but everything behind and was prepared and saw how, things related to other stuff that was going on and would help him foment, if he was doing an interview, his questions. And that's why I always have thought that Mike is really good in an interview setting.
Spent 26 years at ESPN, and you mentioned the relationships that you were able to forge over time. What aspect sticks out the most to you in terms of what you cherish the most once you were done with your time leading the charge at ESPN Radio?
What we created. Now, when I started out, we were just talk shows, and we were just Saturday, Sundays. We did 7 hours Saturday and Sunday evenings, 6 p. to 1 a. Eastern. We had a 2-hour show on Sunday morning, 7 to 9. We started January 1992. 1994 was when they started to expand. And, and ultimately either, I forget if it was that year or maybe a year later, with 24/7. And our first play-by-play rights were NBA 1995-96 season. And that coincided with the second Jordan 3-peat. And my whole focus when I was, given that to lead, and again, it was just the NBA to start. 1998, we'd get baseball, and then we got college football, and then just, snowballed. But my initial focus was to make sure that we were every bit as good as ESPN television. That our productions and our values were every bit as good as television. And I was fortunate that I had a huge talent pool to choose from. Plus, people who were on the outside at this point, but wanted to become part of what we were doing. And had great young people inside who were really eager to learn and good people. And one of the best compliments I got over those 26 years, Emmanuel, was from outside. Some people inside the company, but from people outside, from NBA people or baseball people, said, "You have great people. You have great people." And I used to say, "Well, I have an aversion to jerks," but it was a big thing with me because you guys are starting out, but I'm sure that you've seen it. There's so much ego in this business, and people that, and great ambition is great, trying to get ahead. Some people are really good at it. They don't wear it on their sleeves. Other people, they have it front and center, and they'll put it right in your face, and they'll do almost anything to make sure that they reach their goal, and even if it's at the expense of yours, and even if it's not in the best of circumstances. Okay, so ultimately, by the time I left, there was, they had a retirement thing, and of course they had people, with, saying nice things about me. But they were all, I knew they were sincere, because there was no upside to telling me how great I was now, because I couldn't help them anymore. But so that's the thing that I take away, and I think you hear that with a lot of people who walk away from any job. It's the relationships and the people you worked with, and a certain sense of pride too in seeing some people that you know you helped mold and shape, and they've gone on and you know, they're doing some great things in their own right. So that's it for me.
If my understanding is correct, you oversaw, I think it's close to 4,200 the production of 4,200 events at ESPN Radio. Is there any chance that you have a favorite or most memorable one throughout your time?
I have a lot of memorable ones. You know, if you watch The Last Dance, was that back in March, I think ESPN aired that. If you look quick in the background of a lot of the game action, you know, you can see my mug. And that whole 3 years of those, you know, the Jordan Bulls, that second three-peat, remarkable games. The game 6, 98 stands out. You know, Michael's last game as a Bull and the game-winning shot. If right after the steal of Malone from the back, off Malone from the backside. The year before, Game 5, the flu game. Quinn Buckner, who was one of my sideline reporters, had come out to me about an hour or so before tip-off and pulled me aside, and he said, Michael may not play. And I said, he died? I said, because if he's not playing, then he passed away. There's no way Michael Jordan is not playing. And he explained to me that food poisoning or whatever, they weren't sure, but he was lying inside in like a trainer room, lights out, may not play. And when he finally came out to warm up, when you looked at him, it was clear, okay, that he is definitely not himself. And he still scored 38 points. And they won the game, and they went back to Chicago, and Jameson wrapped that, you know, that one up in Game 6. But so there are a number of Bulls games. The Vince Young National Championship, Texas over USC, was a phenomenal game. Then 2001 World Series, for everything that it was on the heels of 9/11, you know, here in New York. And those 7 games, and especially games 4 and 5 at the stadium, when you know the Yankees look like, okay, they're done, and you know rabbits just keep coming out of the hat, and you know Jeter gets the tag Mr. November off that series. We did, you know, Kentucky derbies, you know, some great stuff there. You know, and more recently we started to do NFL, and you know there are, you know, Sunday some great games there too. So there's a whole array, and I don't know that I can ever pick out one as the one, but there were a lot of all 1A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever, on and on.
John, you came to be known as Chief throughout your career.
Yeah.
How did that originate?
There was a fellow FUVer who used to go around and call everybody, "Hey, Chief, how you doing, Chief? What's going on, Chief?" And when I was at Sports Phone, I started to pick up on that a little bit. And the guy at Sports Phone, Mike Farrell, one day just said, "Okay, we got Wally's doing this, and Chief, you're going to do this." And I said, "Huh? Chief? Okay." And it just it really started then at Sports Phone, and then just started to stick. And I knew that it, you know, years later, I kind of arrived at ESPN when George Bodenheimer was the CEO, came up to me at an event once and said, "Chief, how are we doing today?" I said, "Good, George, how are you?" And so it stuck. It wasn't, I think over the years, people thought that, well, he's the chief, he's the guy. It didn't start out that way. It might have evolved into that, but it didn't start out that way. And I mean, I have to be honest. At times, I was a little embarrassed by it because that's the chief. Yeah, I'm just another one of the guys. So, you know, I make a decision here and there. So that's how it started.
John, many of the people that we've had on this podcast so far are sort of on their way to a bigger career as they start off in the industry. You are more of a veteran, and I was curious to
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I like that. You're done.
I was curious to get your advice as someone who's kind of been through it all for anyone who wants to enter the broadcasting field.
Look, I think any field that you're going into is, presents obstacles, tough to break into. I think this field probably more than any other. Although with how things have expanded over the years, with what we're doing now, podcasts, there are a greater number of positions and I think career choices to choose from within the industry. But I think going back to what Madden had said to me, like, what do you want to do? You have to have a pretty good idea of what you want to do, and then you have to be committed to it. You can't wait around for somebody to come to you and hand you something. You have to be proactive. To me, you can't be, well, I need a weekend off, or I don't want to. No, you have to go in, full bore. I was very fortunate that my wife, Mary Ann, was also a WFUV alum. Early on, when I was maybe doing 3 different things at the same time, and she never complained or said, no, you have to make time for me. I mean, we did. Also helped that, she ended up in the broadcast business too, like marketing and sales and stuff. But she understood that. And I've seen so many people in my industry who lost out on relationships and gone through divorces and stuff because their partner, and I'm not casting aspersions on it, but just wouldn't deal with it. Said, I'm not going to deal with this, and walk away. So you have to be committed. You have to be willing to take risks. I had some opportunities early on, and I didn't think I was ready for them, and I turned them down. And as I look back, I should have at least given it a go. I really did. I had this thing about I didn't want to embarrass myself, and that was a mistake. I think things turned out great for me. Don't get me wrong, but I think if somebody presents an opportunity, grab it, go for it. Prepare for it. That's the other thing too. Be prepared. Anytime you're moving into a new situation, or again, somebody offers you that opportunity, well, then say yes, and then take a step back and find people who have done that and get as much background as you can. I think these days that's a lot easier. If somebody offered you a play-by-play gig, what I was offered was to call an NHL game on the old USA Network, and I hadn't done any TV, period. And I thought about it, and the person who offered, the producer, said, I think you'd be good at it. And I thought about it, and I said, wow, I just don't want to go and fall flat on my face. Well, there were people I could have reached out to, but nowadays it'd be a lot easier for me to go and look at video, just firing up my computer and look at video and study people who call games and how they do it, and camera shots and et cetera, et cetera. There's so much more information out there, and avenues for people to learn and pick up, and I think then and execute from that.
As someone who's seen the growth of radio play-by-play over time, now you're seeing teams take a different approach, whether it's scaling back a little bit on the radio or going digital and going off terrestrial. Where do you see the future of radio 5-10 years from now?
I was asked that same question 5 or 10 years ago, Emmanuel, and back then HD radio had been, starting to make some noise. And I thought, okay, this is probably the future of it. And I was wrong. So I don't, I mean, the answer is I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I still think, radio play-by-play is viable. Now how it's going to unfold down the road, I really don't know. I'm being totally honest. I don't have a crystal ball about that. I hope it still exists because I think it's a great training ground. I mean, to me, if you're good doing play-by-play, or if you're just good on the radio, if you're hosting a talk show, if you're doing a newscast, then to move to the television side is a bunt. It's easy because radio, you have to ad lib and you have to react. You don't rely on a teleprompter. I would get some guys at ESPN at times with, I want to do a radio game, or I want to work this, and they'd come over, and as good as they were on TV, I would find out that, oh my God, without a teleprompter, you're lost. You have trouble like stitching together 3 or 4 words in a coherent sentence. It was remarkable to me. A great learning point too for me. So, I mean, I still think there's great value in this. But again, like your generation and younger than you, this isn't how you've come up. So I hope it continues to exist the way it is. I think it's going to change. So that's the best I can do for you.
And looking ahead, some of the questions we've asked previous guests involve WFUV and the pillars that have allowed it to remain strong to this day. You've stayed very involved with the program since you were at the station itself. What are some of those pillars that you think always will exist at FUV and always need to exist to remain the powerhouse that it has been and tries to continue to be?
Well, I think didn't happen so much back when I was there, which was mid-late 70s on. But since then, when you get Mike Breens to come up and I'm just off the top of my head, Alice Gaynor and the number of alums who are out in the business now, who come back and either they have the time to do workshops or just to sit down and address and answer questions and talk about, their career path, how they did it, what's going on now. I think that's a tremendous resource and a pillar, as you say, for the station to keep on growing and, turning out great talent to work in this business. And we didn't have it so much then, just because it just wasn't, I guess there was nobody on the inside, like I'm thinking about George and Bob Aarons, that really nurtured that and really, brought people like myself back in, say, hey, can you help out? Can you listen? Can you critique? Can you give the kids some opinions? And to be, frank about it too, not to sugarcoat things. So I think that's the biggest thing. Fordham, certainly. And the strength of that station, the strength of that signal, because, as I've often said, you never know who's listening and who's out there and hears somebody and said, wow, maybe that person isn't ready right now, but you hear something, said, boy, down the road with some work, and they might reach out personally or reach out to somebody in the station, or your resume finally crosses a desk and say, oh, I used to listen to that. Yeah, come on in, let's talk.
John, really appreciate a few minutes. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the year, as wild as it has been.
Thanks, John.
I'll do my best. Emmanuel, Nick, thanks so much.